If you have ever set goals in your life, then I'm sure that you have experienced obstacles that have gotten in the way and prevented you from achieving your goal. Well, today we're going to talk about how to overcome obstacles to help you achieve your goals. So one of the goals that I have, well, I'll tell you my longer term goal. So a couple of years ago in Kanab, they have an event called Run Fest. And they have runners that come from all over the country and actually from other countries. And they come to Kanab and they do 3 days of running, and they do a run in each or around 3 of the national parks that are close by. So there's Zion National Park, there's Bryce Canyon, and there's the Grand Canyon. Kanab's kind of right in the middle of all 3 of those. And so they come and they do a run, but then they also have speakers and they have booths and things like that. And they have an area near the park in Kanab where tents are set up so that all of the runners can come and stay and spend time there. Well, a couple of years ago, I went and I listened to a couple of the speakers. So these are ultra runners, and they talk about experiences, runs that they have done, lessons learned, and things like that. And then they also have a part where they show movies about runners, so they're kind of documentaries. And in 2007, I think maybe it was 2006, I don't remember for sure, I ran a marathon, and that was the first and the only marathon that I have ever run. And when I ran that marathon, I've always been concerned about the damage that I've heard about that runners get. So that it hurts your knees, it hurts your hips and all of that. And so I didn't want to cause damage to my body. But I enjoyed running, and I really liked running 10K races. But I would do almost all of my training on a treadmill. I figured, well, that would probably be better on my knees and better on my hips. And so I would train on the treadmill, and then the only time I'd really run out on the road is when I would go and run a race. The other thing is that, I think I've always been pretty busy since I've been married. I've always been busy with work and with other things, and family is important to me. So I've never wanted to take time away from family things for what I considered to be maybe selfish on my part of wanting to run. So I would usually run on the treadmill late at night when everyone had gone to bed. I never really did training, so I didn't, research on, how to increase your miles and things like that. I just ran, and I got to where I was in pretty good shape because I ran regularly. And so when I ran my marathon, the furthest that I had ever run at one time was about 13 miles. And so a marathon is 26 miles. But again, I didn't want to make the time to do that. And I was concerned about long runs and, the damage that might do to my body. So anyway, I ran the marathon, and it was a great experience, and I actually felt pretty good for the whole marathon. My time was good, but it took me a long time to recover. There was parts of my body that it took about a year before my body seemed to feel normal again. And so as a result of that, I just kind of made a decision that, I probably wouldn't run any more marathons. I just didn't have a desire to do it. But when I went to this Trail Fest a couple of years ago, and they talked about running these ultra races, there's something in me that just said, I want to do that. I have this desire, to see what I can do. And so I like to push myself. I like to accomplish hard things, even though I also like to find excuses to not accomplish them. But I like the idea of doing hard things, and I really respect and admire people that push themselves and are able to do things that you just wouldn't think people could do. So anyway, after watching some of those videos and listening to people talk, I made a decision then that I wanted to run a 100-mile race. And so I didn't know exactly how I would do that, but I decided to set that as a goal. Well, so last year was the first year that I set a goal to really begin to prepare to run a 100-mile race, and my goal was to run an ultra marathon. So in January, I signed up to run a 50K race at Bryce Canyon, and I started then training and getting into shape. So over the years, I've run quite a bit, but I ran a lot up to about 2008. And then when we started our business kind of got in the way, and I didn't run as regular or as often. But I continued to run some throughout the time. And the last couple of years, I've run generally 2 or 3 half marathons in a year and maybe 1 or 2 10Ks. So I felt like I could get in shape and I could do a 30, to a 35-mile run. But right after I signed up to run the 50K last year, I did something to hurt my knee. And it was like the back of my knee, and I felt like I had hyperextended it or something. I didn't know for sure what it was. And I just thought, it would get better. But it didn't get better. And I was unable to run. I was unable to work out. So as the time went on, in my mind, so remember, the only limitations that I believe exist are the limitations that are in our mind. So I believe that because of the injuries to my knee, I couldn't run, I couldn't train, and I kept telling myself that I just probably wouldn't. Well, if my knee didn't get better and I wasn't able to train, I just wouldn't be able to run that 50K. Well, about 2 weeks prior to the date of the race, I started getting emails, and then my packet came in the mail with the shirt and the information about the run. And I started to get excited. And I thought, you know what, maybe I should just go and try. I haven't yet run an ultra marathon. I'd never run a race on trails. All of my runs had always been on the road. And so I just started thinking about it. So now I went from thinking that I'm not going to run the race, or I can't run the race, to now an idea of, well, maybe I could. So I then exercised on a stair climber or an elliptical. And when I did it, my knee was fine. So that's kind of interesting, right? So it had been from the end of January, February, March, April. I think the race was in June last year. So I had almost 4 months of really no training, no exercise. So I did the elliptical and my leg was fine. Maybe my leg would have been fine even if I would have done it throughout. I don't know. So I did that, and then I exercised 2 more times before the race, and it didn't bother my knee. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and just run the race. I didn't expect to finish, but I thought I'll just go and see how far I can run and experience it and see what it's like. And so I did it, and interestingly, I ran 22 miles. My knee didn't bother me at all in the whole race. Other things bothered me and got in the way, but my knee didn't bother me. But I wasn't in shape, and my legs just wore out, and there was a lot of steep hills and inclines, and so my time was slow. I wasn't going to be able to finish in the allotted time frame, so at the aid station at 22 miles, I dropped out. Well, that was a learning opportunity for me about, could I have done more? Well, on hindsight, I believe that I could have. But again, because of the limitations in my mind, I didn't do that. So I set a goal now for this year to run 50K. And yet I haven't been doing what I need to do to prepare. So I haven't been exercising and running regularly. Even from when I set this goal back in January, I've only run a couple of times. In fact, the cool thing is there's a lot of neat apps and stuff like that to track your workouts and stuff. But in mine, if I look back, when I made the decision to do this was on our cruise in January. And I ran while we were on our cruise. And then I ran on January 12th and I ran on January 28th. And then I did another run on February 2nd, but then not another one until February 15th. And then I had my wake-up call from David Goggins' book of this is about self-discipline, it's about self-mastery, and I need to begin to master myself and not let physical pain dictate what I'm going to do, not let expected physical pain get in the way, but that I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to do all that I can do. David in his book talks about, in his training in the Navy SEALs and then in the Army and then as an ultra runner, of him pushing through extreme pain. And what he found is, and what he says, is that when we push ourselves as far as we can go to where we feel like we can't do anything more, we're really only at about 40%. Which means if we can get past this, we can push ourselves and do more than we believe that we can. And so on February 20th, I made that decision to recommit and to start exercising. And so on that day, I did 30 minutes on the stair climber, and then I did 1 hour on a stationary bicycle. I did 27 miles. The next day, so February 21st, I ran 6.2 miles on the treadmill, ran for 64 minutes. On the 22nd, I rode the stationary bike for 65 minutes. So one thing that David Goggins talks about is pushing yourself and doing a little bit more each day. He says don't do what he did, but push yourself, go as far as you can, and then push yourself and do a little bit more. So I did 60 minutes the first day, I did 65 minutes the second time on the bike, and I did 30 miles that day, and then I did the stair climber for 33 minutes instead of the 30 minutes. On the 23rd, I did 50 minutes on the cycle, so I didn't do more than I had. I went 23 miles, but I also went running that day, so running on a trail, and I did 7.1 miles of running. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to be accountable to you, and I'm sharing with you kind of what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. So you're going to see the mistakes that I make, but hopefully you'll also see what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do to be more consistent and to discipline myself. That one was on the 23rd. So on the 24th, I didn't exercise on that day. On the 25th, I ran 8 miles on the treadmill. And then here's what happened. So I've had something in my back, that my back has been bothering me since the last half marathon that I ran, which I think was in October or November. And it's just kind of irritating. And I let that get in the way. So it's hard for me to push through that pain. Anyway, after I ran 8 miles, the pain came back in my back and in my legs. So that starts to play with my mind of, am I going to have physical things that bother me? And it's interesting. So even right now on my right leg, I feel like I have the same thing on my right leg that I had on my left leg last year, where it feels like there's something on the back part of my leg. But anyway, so I went into the chiropractor for an adjustment from bothering my back, but then I could still feel it even after going to the chiropractor. So here's where I didn't follow through. So on the 26th, I had a goal again to exercise. I've been keeping my commitment about getting up at 5:30 in the morning, but there were 2 days in a row where I had about 4 hours of sleep. And on the 26th, it was cold in our house because it's been really cold. and I didn't want to start a fire, so I grabbed a blanket and I just curled up on the couch to get warm, and I actually fell asleep. So I fell asleep at about 8:30. I woke up at 11:30, so I ended up not exercising on the 26th. So again, we can learn from not completing our goals. So I fell asleep. I need to be more aware of that and not allow that to happen in the future. The next day was the 27th, and I rode the stationary bike for 64 minutes. I did 30 miles, and then I did the stair climber for 35 minutes. And no pain at all in my back. In fact, my back felt great after that, and it felt great all of the next day. And so yesterday, the 28th, I ran 7 miles on the treadmill and no pain in my back, no problem in my legs. So what I'm trying to work on and to learn this year is those thoughts, those obstacles that come in the way that keep me from moving forward. Most of it is just mental, and we can push through that. And so my goal now moving forward is that I will run or do some type of cardio 3 to 6 days a week. I'm also working on doing more weight training to build up the muscles in my legs and also in my arms. But that's my goal, and I made that commitment to do more. So I'm actually doing the training, and I signed up to run my first ultra marathon. So it's a 50K, and it's the 23rd of March. So it's 23 days. It's 3 weeks from tomorrow. So when we film again, I'll let you know how I did on that race. And I encourage you to set your goals, work on becoming aware of what are your thoughts and the obstacles that come up, and see if you allow those obstacles to stop you, or if you're able to find ways to push through and accomplish the goals that you set for yourself. And remember, it's really about the self-discipline on a daily basis of what we do day in and day out that's going to help us accomplish those longer term goals. Thanks for watching. And again, if you would like to be part of, or you want to share your journey with us, then comment below. And if you want us to help hold you accountable, we can actually figure out a way to do that. If there's enough of you interested, we could create a Facebook page, for this to help hold each other accountable. So comment below, share your thoughts and your experiences, subscribe to our channel, visit our website, and if you're watching on LinkedIn, follow me here.